And bend 1 basically just means part 1. So when I heard bend, I was like, what the heck is a bend? Why are they using this word that I don't hear very often? But bend 1 is basically just part 1. And then you've got, so for 4th grade, it's titled Creating and Developing Stories and Characters That Feel Real. In 5th grade, it is generating a personal narrative. So that's your first part. And so, for example, one bend is going to be about that. That's the chunk of one bend in the unit. Within the bend, there are about 18 to 20 sessions or lessons, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So, you can go ahead and highlight the other 3 bends if you haven't done that yet, but we've got bend 2. For 4th grade, it's drafting and revising with an eye towards believability. 5th grade, it's moving through the writing process, rehearsings, draftings, revising, and editing. So it looks like bend 2, or part 2, is more about the revising and the editing, whereas bend 1 is sort of helping them to generate ideas, what good ideas look like. And then bend 3, or part 3, 4th grade, preparing for publication with an audience in mind. Bend 3 in 5th grade is learning from mentor texts. So, it looks like 4th grade has 4 bends, and 5th grade only has 3 bends, or 3 parts. And then, like I said, within this bend, or within this first part, you're going to have 18 to 21 sessions. And a session is basically a lesson. So if I skip over, did you guys read Welcome to the Unit? Were you able to? Okay. Kind of gives you a good overview. But as you get to bend 1, or part 1, where you actually start teaching, you'll see it's titled Session, and it's session 1. Each session is probably going to take you 2 days. They recommend that you don't go over 2 days with a session if you can help it, just because we're trying to get 2 of these units, so unit 1 and then unit 2, done by the end of the school year. And so if you extend these sessions like over 3 or 4 days, you're really going to be pushing that timeline pretty bad.
How long is each session supposed to be? Because by the time they get in there and then you have them put away at the end, it's like less than probably 40 minutes.
Yes, each session, I wouldn't say each session. Each day is 45 minutes. Each day is 45 minutes. I know that for you guys it's more like 35 to 40 minutes. Is there any way, I know on Mondays we don't teach ELD. Well, I didn't really just say that out loud, but is there any way to extend your ELD from Tuesday to Friday by like 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Could you just extend it by 5 minutes, and then that would take care of at least the transition, and then you can go ahead and start your mini lesson, and you'll have that extra 5 minutes, because that would be helpful, I think, in order to do this. But, and then we'll talk about what your day looks like in just a second, how it's broken down. But each session, or each lesson, is approximately 2 days. You might not need 2 days for one, but you might definitely need 2 days.
Hola, señor Cruz, ¿cómo está? ¿No es hasta el viernes?
¿Hasta el viernes?
Sí, es el viernes, no me diga que pidió día de trabajo. No me diga, sí, el 5, el día 5.
Es que no me acordaba la fecha, pero tiene el día hoy.
Sí, ay, qué pena, me da mucha pena porque no
sí.
tenemos los papeles ni nada ahorita.
Ok. Para el
Seguro
viernes.
para el viernes. Usted me dice, puede comunicarse conmigo si por algo no le resulta.
O le mando un
Sí, de verdad que sí, porque igual puedo buscar otra fecha para citar, porque como está cerquita,
Sí.
a hoy, para que no sé cómo sea en el trabajo, pero...
Ok.
Ay,
No,
señor,
claro.
pues, gusto
Gracias.
verlo y perdón que
Disculpe.
hoy no haya sido. Hasta luego, gusto verlo.
Okay. So here it talks about bend 1, how it kind of plants ideas and seeds, and it addresses the text type that they're going to be writing about. Bend 2 is sort of rehearsal, doing flash drafts, revision, or teaching revision lessons. And then that bend 3 or part 3, they do another flash draft. They talk about conventions and they publish and celebrate their writing. So that's sort of each bend in a nutshell. So the way this overview is broken down, at the very top, that first column says session or mini lesson. So as your day begins, the very first thing you're going to be doing is a mini lesson. And that mini lesson, we're going to talk about it again, but it doesn't hurt to go over it. That mini lesson only lasts about 10 to 15 minutes. It's like maybe, actually 12 minutes is what you guys are going to have. So this is going to last 12 minutes. That's your mini lesson, and that's where you're making prior connections and you're teaching for that day and you're having the kids practice for like 3 to 5 minutes, and then you're kind of reminding them what we're doing, and then you're sending them off. So it's a really quick 10 or 12 minute mini lesson. So that's that first section. And then these two together right here, conferring and small group work and mid-workshop teaching, this is when you have sent them off after the mini lesson, you've sent them off for their 20 minutes of writing. And this conferring, like I said, might take place as, the weeks go on and you're more comfortable and you feel like you actually have time to figure out who needs what and what small groups I can meet with. And maybe you have I know that one teacher has a chart on her wall, and there's 5 kids that she meets with every day, and she has them on the wall so she knows this. I'm meeting with these 5 kids today, these 5 kids the next day. But there's many different ways to do that conferring. But that'll take place as we move on. But the mid-workshop teaching, that's just sort of while the kids are writing, you might notice and stop the class for like 2 minutes and say, okay, so I'm noticing that, your ideas are flowing and you're getting a lot of really great ideas down, but I'm noticing, this, and it's just a real quick sort of reteach, sort of, I'm noticing this, let's focus on this, okay, back to writing, a real quick teaching. And so that's that 20 minutes of them writing on their own, and then the very last section is where they're sharing out, and that's the section that I'm hoping does not get that's why I'm asking for that extra 5 minutes, because this share out is really, really important, especially for our ELs, because they can use the sentence frames, they can practice, speaking with each other, using the terminology, and this share out, it's only supposed to take 5 minutes, and there's different ways that you can orchestrate the share out. It can be, okay, let's everybody pick your very favorite sentence that you wrote today, or your favorite turning point that you thought of that you're going to be writing about. But it can just be really quick, your favorite word that you chose, your describing word, or you can have them turn to a partner and share with their partner. Or you can highlight 1 or 2 students, and usually they have you, do you mind if during share out time I have you go ahead and share, this is an amazing sentence, you did a really good job, do you mind sharing that out? And so you can do it partners, you can do it everybody shares one really quick thing, or you can do it maybe highlighting 1 or 2 students. So that's what that share out, and it's just really important, you don't want to forget that part. She's all about celebrating writing and making, really having kids be proud of what they're doing, so that's that part.
She's very positive.
She is, she's very positive, and she's very wordy too, as you'll notice in here, so hopefully we can figure out how to pull out the most important parts, but. Okay, so that's kind of the overview. Like I was sort of sharing, the structure of a session or a lesson, the 15-minute mini lesson, you guys are really only going to have about 12 minutes. And then there's the writing time is 20 to 25 minutes. You're going to have about 20 minutes. And then the share out is 5 minutes. So that's sort of what your 45 minutes will look like. Okay, so how are we doing on time? I think that we'll have enough time to do this really quick. Actually, before we do that, is there any questions about this? No? Okay. In your binder, the very first page of your binder is the implementation guide. And that's gonna look the same for everybody, but I don't want to beat a dead horse. So basically, this writing schedule is what your 45 minutes is gonna look like. The mini lesson, the writing, and the share out. Year at a glance, 4 units of instruction. For us, it's going to be just 2. That's our goal. Like I said, there's 5 to 7 alternate units in that if-then book that I was showing you. Each unit, which is the spiral notebook, consists of about 3 to 4 bends or 3 to 4 parts, 18 to 23 sessions per part, and 6 to 8 weeks of instruction. I have us for grade 4 teaching the narrative going into February. It's just kind of an approximate, like what we were sort of projecting. So you have until the end of February to maybe get the narrative done, and you might finish early, just depending on how things go. That's totally fine. And then the opinion would be next, and that would take us to the end of the year. And the same thing, 5th grade, you have the narrative first, and then informational second. So, down here, the person who trained us included some ELD's areas of emphasis, accentuate the active engagement. During the mini lesson, which is that first 10 to 12 minutes of your time, there is one little section of active engagement where they might just turn to their partner and try what you just taught them. So that's active engagement where they're communicating with each other. Don't forget that part, and then the share out at the end. Don't skip the share. Be strategic in choices of partners. You know, you might have a newcomer, and you might want to make sure you're pairing them up with somebody who is, you know, fluent in English, so that they're getting that support that they need. Emulate given teaching style, animated, dramatized, visual. You want to use as many visuals as possible. Be animated if you can. You're going to be creating anchor charts, which I included a few examples in your notebook. But when you do anchor charts, try to, you know, with your kids, they might need to have a visual there just to kind of emphasize what you're talking about. So they can maybe even just glance at the visual and say, oh, did I include that in my paper? So visuals are really helpful when you're making your anchor charts. And I'll explain the anchor charts. Provide conversational prompts, sort of like sentence frames. Put small groups with like linguistic needs. Individual goals should be set to alleviate their language acquisition as well as writing skills. The goal setting comes a little bit later. Right now, we're just trying to get, you know, these sessions taught and sort of figure out the logistics. So the goal setting is something that might come a little bit later as you feel more comfortable with the program, but the goal setting is important. Differentiation through choice and social interaction. I believe that what that means is the differentiation through choice. You're not necessarily giving them a topic and they're not going to be writing about that specific topic. They're going to have a lot of choice because you're going to teach them how to like list ideas or list turning points in their life that they could talk about, and they'll be able to choose from that, which is something they would be comfortable with and would be more at their level instead of you just giving them a topic that they might not be able to relate to. So, contextualized exposure to new genres, structures, and vocabularies, and lots of opportunities to write and speak. So, those are just some ideas of how we can support our ELs in this program.
Can I ask you something again?
Yeah.
It had just said pull small groups with like linguistic needs, which doesn't relate to this, but as far as using the mentor texts at their level, there's such a wide variety of levels in our classes. Are we going to differentiate among the kids with mentor texts, or are we really meant to be doing it all as one class?
We're really meant to be doing it all with one class.
Okay.
But it's a little bit more difficult with us this year because you have there's one class that's doing it. And like I said before, I think she's very open to doing this maybe next year with all of 4th and 5th grade, which would lend itself to grouping a little bit better and more level, like at their level. So you might have, so I'm projecting it in next year, but that might happen a little easier next year if we can group the kids accordingly. Whereas right now you have sort of, I know, a wide range.
Okay. I mean, sure, as we go into it, you'll be able to tell us what would be an appropriate grade level.
Yeah, I'm trying to
kind of
figure out,
address.
we don't want it to be too difficult for the low, but not so easy, but I'm almost rather maybe have it be a little bit easier and have them really just read it a lot closer and looking for certain things and gathering ideas from that. It's not as much comprehension as it is learning what good writers do, you know, and how they generate ideas and things like that. So I'm thinking a little easier than harder.
Okay. Yeah.
but I.
Was this originally written as a writing program?